was supposed to be a reinvention, a triumph, a redemption arc for one of the most polarizing couples in modern media. When Netflix signed the Sussexes, they weren't just investing in a docuseries or a podcast, they thought they were buying cultural capital, prestige, the kind of celebrity sparkle that sells subscriptions and silences critics. What did they get instead? A slow-motion disaster. A storyline so bizarre, so mismanaged, so off-brand, that even the most forgiving PR teams can't spin it anymore. Let's be clear. With Love, Meghan was never just a cooking show. It was a rebranding campaign in disguise. One more attempt to convince the world that Meghan Markle isn't just a duchess, but a business mogul, a lifestyle guru, a relatable mom next door who just happens to have Hollywood lighting and a royal title. But the second the cameras started rolling, the cracks began to show. Where were the A-list guests? Where were the compelling stories? Why did it feel more like a high-budget Pinterest ad than a genuine human experience? And most importantly, where was Harry? Because that's the part Netflix didn't plan for. The total disappearance of the one thing that gave Meghan's brand any global leverage in the first place. Prince Harry instead of a power couple. Viewers got a solo act, and not a particularly convincing one. And behind the scenes, rumors of chaos, staff walkouts, executive tantrums. Even Netflix, the same company that backed Meghan through ridicule and controversy, began to distance itself from the project quietly. This wasn't just a creative misfire, it was a strategic embarrassment. Meghan thought she could control the narrative, but when the viewership numbers tanked, and even die-hard supporters stopped defending the project, one thing became crystal clear. This wasn't the story Netflix paid for. But what was it? Stick around, because what happened next, behind the cameras, in the boardrooms, and inside Meghan and Harry's crumbling PR bubble, reveals just how far the illusion has collapsed and why the next few months may be make or break for the entire Sussex brand. And trust me, you haven't heard the worst of it yet. They say every great downfall starts with a love story, but this one? This wasn't Romeo and Juliet. It was more like Bonnie and Clyde. But instead of bank vaults, they were robbing headlines. From the outside, it was irresistible. A Hollywood actress and a real-life prince. Glamour meets royalty. American hustle meets British legacy. But peel back the surface, and the truth isn't nearly as charming. Meghan wasn't the Disney princess everyone imagined. By the time she met Harry, she'd already aged out of the typical ingenue roles in Hollywood. No major movie roles, no breakout TV moment beyond Suits, and no mainstream fame. In the brutal world of entertainment, she was hitting a wall. The offers weren't flooding in, her fame wasn't rising, and she knew it. She needed a new path to power, and fast. Enter Prince Harry. To Meghan, Harry wasn't just a romantic partner. He was the brand opportunity of a lifetime. Royal blood, global recognition, media attention guaranteed until the end of time. And more importantly, he was vulnerable, emotionally bruised, adrift, a man desperate to escape his golden cage and create a new identity outside of palace walls. Harry, for his part, had always felt like the spare, not the heir, not the golden child. William had the crown, the duty, the destiny. Harry had jokes, party scandals, a string of failed relationships. He didn't want the pressure of the throne, but he craved the spotlight. He wanted to matter, and Meghan made him feel like he finally did, at least in the beginning. But here's the problem with building a relationship on PR chemistry instead of emotional chemistry. Eventually, the script falls apart, and that's exactly what's happening. Behind closed doors, the tension is undeniable. Meghan, who once claimed to be done with acting, is now back in full performance mode. From curated Instagram comebacks to awkward lifestyle content on Netflix, everything is branded, everything is polished, everything is hers. And Harry? He's barely visible. Reduced to the occasional voiceover, background cameo, or, according to insiders, unpaid cameraman for Meghan's content, he's the prince who gave up a palace for a ring light. And the irony? Meghan once resented being called Harry's wife. She wanted her own spotlight, her own titles, her own empire. But the second she tried to go solo, the cracks in the foundation became impossible to ignore. Viewership dropped, the media soured, public sympathy vanished. Because whether she likes it or not, Meghan Markle without Prince Harry is just another influencer with a vanity project. And Meghan knows it. That's where the resentment creeps in. Sources close to the couple say the fights behind closed doors are more frequent, more vicious. Meghan believes Harry dragged her down with royal baggage. Harry believes Meghan used him for status, then discarded the parts of him that didn't fit her brand. What's worse, their dynamic is no longer a secret. Netflix sees it, staff see it, viewers feel it. This isn't a power couple, it's a brand war, with two narcissists pulling the same cart in opposite directions. Think about it. When was the last time you saw Meghan Markle laugh at one of Harry's jokes? Or let him finish a sentence without correcting the story? She doesn't want a partner. She wants a a prince-shaped prop with pedigree and emotional trauma she can repurpose for her next campaign. And Harry? He just wants peace. No more press, no more palace, no more conflict. But here's the catch. You don't get peace when you marry into war. And this marriage? It's been a battlefield from the start. Because what began as a story of two people escaping tradition has turned into a slow-motion collapse of trust, of identity, and of the very myth that sold this relationship to the world. The sad truth? They didn't fall in love with each other. They fell in love with what the other represented. And when those illusions shattered, what was left? An actress chasing fame, a prince chasing relevance, and a business arrangement dressed up as romance, one that's now unraveling faster than anyone imagined. But the moment Meghan realized Harry couldn't deliver the life she thought he promised, that's when the knives came out. And what she did next may have changed the entire dynamic, not just of the marriage, but of the brand. Stick around. There's an unspoken rule in Hollywood, one that haunts every aspiring actress. If you haven't made it by 30, you're running out of time. By 35, you're invisible. And Meghan Markle knew it. Before she ever set foot in the royal palace, Meghan had already faced the cold brutality of the entertainment industry. Suits gave her a small boost, sure, a supporting role on a mid-tier cable drama. But she was never the lead, never the breakout star, never the name above the title. While others her age were landing film franchises, red carpet deals, and cover shoots, Meghan was doing Hallmark movies and running a lifestyle blog. She wasn't a failure, but she wasn't a success either. And in Hollywood, there's no middle ground. By the time she met Prince Harry, she wasn't building a career. She was scrambling for relevance. Auditions had slowed. Casting directors had stopped calling. The window was closing. She needed a miracle. What she got was something better, a prince. To Meghan, Harry wasn't just a love story. He was a brand refresh, the ultimate character upgrade. One minute, she was a cable actress aging out of Hollywood. The next, she was global royalty, a duchess, a headline, a movement, and she ran with it, fast. But here's the thing about trying to reinvent yourself in the public eye. If the audience doesn't believe it, it doesn't stick. Meghan traded the red carpet for royal duties, then traded those duties for Oprah interviews, podcasts, and eventually, a full-blown Hollywood rebrand. But the thread running through it all? It was never about purpose. It was always about perception. She didn't want to create a product. She wanted to be the product. That's why she couldn't just do a cooking show. She needed to be the star, the executive producer, the brand face, the lifestyle guru, and the main character. Every frame had to be lit just right. Every guest had to praise her. Every moment had to feel curated, elevated, important. And if it didn't, it was reshot, re-edited, or deleted altogether. Because underneath the smiles and authenticity, there's one terrifying truth Meghan couldn't admit. Not to herself, not to Netflix, not to Harry. The spotlight she chased her entire life was never designed for her. By the time she launched with Love, Meghan, the Hollywood dream, had already slipped through her fingers. And no matter how many pastel cakes, designer plates, or recycled Diana poses she served to the camera, the public could feel it. It wasn't real, it wasn't earned, it was forced. And Hollywood, it knows the difference. Casting directors talk, PR teams whisper, studio execs don't forget. They remember the talent who were difficult on set, the ones who overstepped, who didn't know their lane. Meghan may have left acting behind, but Hollywood didn't leave her behind. It quietly shut the door and kept it locked. That's why she had to create her own empire. Archetypes, Archewell. With Love, Meghan, she wasn't building brands. She was building substitutes for the career she never got. And when those substitutes started to fail, she blamed the system, the media, the palace, Harry, anyone but herself. But the real issue? Hollywood success requires two things Meghan couldn't control: timing and talent. She had neither, not in the way that counts. She arrived too late. And even if she hadn't, what exactly was she selling? No character, no warmth, no humor, no standout skill. Just a curated image and a royal last name that came with baggage she didn't want to carry anymore. Meghan thought marrying Harry would get her to the top, but all it did was buy her a seat at a table she wasn't prepared to sit at. A table full of powerful women who earned their place, not through marriage, but through mastery. And when the world compared Meghan's performative mompreneur brand to women like Martha Stewart, Oprah Winfrey, or even Catherine, Princess of Wales, it wasn't even close. The harsh truth? Meghan wanted to skip the struggle, to start at the finish line, to rebrand herself as an icon without doing the groundwork that icons do. And now that the audience is pulling back, now that even Netflix is reconsidering the investment, the illusion is collapsing. She wasn't an outsider, finally breaking in. She was a B-list actress cosplaying as a mogul, and the industry knows it. So what now? That's where the desperation starts to show, and where Harry's role in her empire becomes more than symbolic. Because behind every failed launch, every Instagram stunt, every passive-aggressive press move, there's a growing panic. If Hollywood no longer wants Meghan, and the royals have cut ties, and the audience has tuned out, what's left? That question is haunting her team. And soon, it may define the next chapter of the Sussex story, for better or worse. But Meghan still had one card left to play, and it involved her children, her camera crew, and a very public manipulation that made Netflix executives furious. It started with a subtle edit, a title change, a reposted picture. Then came the emoji-covered faces, the filtered filters, the mystery guest lists, the vanishing comments. One by one, the pieces of Meghan Markle's carefully constructed PR machine began to falter. And for the first time since her royal escape, even the people who once believed in the brand began to ask the question, what exactly is real and what's been fake from the start? Let's rewind to the beginning of 2024. After months of silence, Meghan staged her grand return to Instagram. The branding was crisp, the visuals were expensive, the tone was relatable mom with a French press and $1 million kitchen. But right away, people noticed something was off. She called herself Meghan, but then subtly reinserted Sussex. Her team denied she was using royal titles for promotion, yet every caption, every tag, every article conveniently referenced the Duchess. Meanwhile, she insisted this was all about being real. No more palace protocols, no more PR polish. But when critics tried to comment, the comments were disabled. When viewers asked real questions about the products she featured, no answers. And when did With Love, Meghan finally drop on Netflix? The branding told one story, but the footage told another. This wasn't a cooking show. It was a commercial for a person. A person who refused to be questioned, edited, or challenged in any way. Inside Netflix, staff were stunned by the level of control Meghan demanded. Scripts were rewritten, reshoots were ordered. Staff were asked to sign unusually strict NDAs. One producer allegedly walked out mid-production, calling the environment paranoid, hostile, and weirdly fake. Even worse, the scenes featuring her children, scenes Meghan insisted were spontaneous, had reportedly been staged, with the crew instructed not to speak to the kids or ask questions about their presence. Because, according to insiders, no one on set had ever seen these children before. And yet, here they were, covered in sun hats and emojis, shot from behind, rolled out just in time for the second week of the show's launch, after the viewership numbers tanked. It felt like bait, like a last-minute scramble for sympathy clicks. Netflix execs weren't just irritated, they were livid. They'd paid for exclusive content. Meghan gave it away on Instagram. No preview, no teaser, no tie-in. Just a personal upload and a vague caption. My kids didn't know what I do for work. But here's the kicker. No one else did either. Because by this point, Meghan's public brand had become so bloated, so convoluted, that even her most loyal fans were struggling to explain what exactly she was doing. Was she a businesswoman? A chef? A talk show host? A mother first? Or a mogul always? A duchess or a dropout? She wanted it all. Every identity, every label, every storyline, but without the criticism that came with any of it. And that's when the PR machine began to truly malfunction. When critics mentioned that her show was underperforming, her team went silent. When media outlets asked about the alleged donations to Billie Eilish and Adam Levine, crickets. When rumors swirled that she'd demanded pre-approved questions from Drew Barrymore and sabotaged her own interview, no denial. Every time Meghan had the chance to clear the air, she chose instead to cloud it further. Smoke, mirrors, emoji faces, and ambient music playlists. And Netflix? They'd had enough. Insiders say that after the show's rocky rollout, Meghan requested a personal featurette, an interview-style segment where she would sit down with Netflix's own CEO, Ted Sarandos, for a glowing pre-approved Q&A. The goal? To reset the narrative, to show the world that the boss backed her. But Ted reportedly declined. Politely, firmly, permanently, because even he could see what the rest of the media had started whispering. This wasn't about content anymore. It was about control. Meghan wasn't interested in making something great. She was interested in making something about her. Every frame, every soundbite, every flattering filter. And when that wasn't enough to keep the audience engaged, she blamed the British press, the racist tabloids, the sexist industry, the toxic fans, everyone, except the one person responsible for the chaos, the woman who built a brand on authenticity, then faked everything about it. And the danger now? The more Meghan tries to force the illusion, the faster the cracks spread. The titles, the curated captions, the surprise cameos, none of it is landing anymore. The audience has changed. They're sharper, more skeptical, less willing to be sold a fantasy. Even her allies are falling quiet. The silence from Spotify was deafening. The silence from Netflix has turned into cautious avoidance, because the brand that once promised empowerment and reinvention now feels like a self-obsessed echo chamber. One woman talking to a mirror, convinced the world is still listening. But the world is watching something else now. They're watching Netflix. They're watching Harry. They're watching for signs. signs that this glossy illusion is starting to collapse. And what comes next? It might be the moment that breaks everything Meghan built, because the next stunt, the next rollout, it didn't just confuse the audience, it enraged Netflix. For all the soft lighting, staged smiles, and expensive cameras, with Love, Meghan wasn't a show. It was a warning shot, a lesson in what happens when branding overtakes storytelling, and when a platform like Netflix bets on a personality that no longer resonates with the public. The launch was meant to be her moment. Meghan's post-palace comeback, the long-awaited reveal of who she was without the royal family. Netflix pumped millions into pre-production. Press releases promised heartfelt stories, intimate moments, and raw authenticity. Meghan's PR team hinted at surprise celebrity appearances, emotional revelations, and even a touch of motherhood magic. But by the time the first episode aired, the magic was dead on arrival. Let's talk numbers. Day 1, global ranking at 73. By day 2, it had already dropped to the 85. Day 3, then a 98. Day 5, down to 27 globally, not even in the top 100. And by day 6, with Love, Meghan had quietly disappeared from the platform's trending lists altogether. In an ecosystem where reruns of Peppa Pig can hold chart positions for weeks, Meghan Markle's multi-million-dollar comeback couldn't survive one news cycle. And here's the twist. Netflix knew it. They saw it coming. The moment the first rough cuts came in, insiders say the executive floor went quiet. The footage was flat. The pacing was awkward. The tone felt weirdly disconnected, overly choreographed, painfully scripted, and utterly devoid of charm. There was no central theme, no tension, no narrative arc, just Meghan performing Meghan. She cooked, she posed, she over-explained simple tasks. She name-dropped celebrities who never appeared. She giggled at things no one else could see. It was as if the entire show had been built for an audience of one, herself. And worst of all, she left Harry out, completely. Remember, Netflix didn't just buy Meghan, they bought the Sussex duo, the royal dynamic, the possibility of glimpsing the softer side of a prince-turned-outsider. But what they got was a solo act. Harry appeared in the margins, silent and subdued, a prop, a cameo, a blurry background figure holding a phone, while Meghan made herself the centerpiece of every moment. And Netflix? They were furious. Executives couldn't understand how the star power of two globally recognized figures had been whittled down into a Pinterest-themed vanity project. They expected Diana to be an heir and a modern feminist icon. What they got was a color-graded casserole dish and a conversation about elevating toast. The internal backlash was swift. Ted Sarandos, Netflix's co-CEO and original champion of the Sussex deal, reportedly refused a request from Meghan's team to film a sit-down fireside chat between him and Meghan to reframe the public perception. She wanted him on camera, as a sign of support. A pre-recorded, fully scripted, softball-filled promo disguised as a conversation. Sarandos declined. And that's when Meghan panicked, because the one thing she never prepared for was failure. She had carefully constructed a world where criticism could be deflected onto the British media, onto the royal family, onto sexism, racism, jealousy, anything but her own missteps. But with Love, Meghan wasn't being reviewed by tabloids. It was being ignored by the public. Even Meghan's allies couldn't spin the numbers. Spotify, once her podcast partner, remained silent. Hollywood trades like Deadline and The Hollywood Reporter offered lukewarm blurbs at best. Twitter, or X as it's now called, was merciless. TikTok exploded with parody edits, sarcastic voiceovers, and people mocking the show's bizarre pacing, awkward silences, and Meghan's obsession with announcing things like, "I made this cheese because I knew you were coming." The reviews weren't just bad, they were brutal. And the content? Even worse. What was supposed to be a show about community and connection quickly became a one-woman performance. Meghan would ask guests shallow questions, interrupt their answers, and pivot back to herself. "You know, when I was in Botswana, I actually made that bread myself. Do you like the flowers? I arranged them from my garden." Guests were props. Background music was vintage jazz. Lighting was soft focus. It felt less like a TV show and more like a royal aesthetic hostage situation. Netflix execs called emergency meetings. The Christmas special, once billed as a celebratory follow-up, was shelved indefinitely. Behind the scenes, production staff whispered about low morale, zero direction, and a creative dictatorship, where everything had to be run through Meghan's inner circle of PR handlers, stylists, and yes-men. Even guest booking became a nightmare. Multiple celebrities allegedly backed out after seeing how the first round of episodes were edited, with one A-lister described as furious that her kind gestures were turned into what felt like staged infomercial moments. The kicker? Despite all of this, Meghan still believed the failure wasn't her fault. Sources say she blamed the British press, social media bots, and even Netflix itself, accusing the platform of not marketing the show properly and burying it under bigger titles. But the truth was obvious to anyone who watched even 5 minutes of the show. There was no there, no real warmth, no emotional depth, no compelling reason to keep watching. Just a woman determined to make the world love her, and confused when it didn't. And Netflix, after months of silence, was left holding the bill for a show that nobody watched, nobody quoted, and nobody wanted to renew. But Meghan wasn't done. Because when the ratings tanked and the support vanished, she reached for her last line of defense: the children, the cameos, the Instagram bait. And that's where the story gets darker and even more desperate. What do you get when you mix unchecked ego, collapsing ratings, and a crew walking on eggshells? You get chaos. Behind the scenes of With Love, Meghan, the glossy visuals and pastel-perfect presentation, hid a production environment so tense, so mismanaged, that even hardened Netflix veterans reportedly described it as unworkable. What was pitched as a feel-good lifestyle project devolved into a morale-bleeding disaster, complete with walkouts, NDAs, and frantic damage control. The warning signs came early. Before a single episode aired, several freelance crew members quietly pulled out of contracts. Some cited scheduling conflicts, others were more blunt. You can't direct someone who thinks they're perfect. Meghan wasn't just hands-on, she was controlling everything. From the lighting temperature of the kitchen shots to the font used in the lower thirds. Guests were pre-screened. Questions were pre-written. Multiple takes were demanded for even the most mundane scenes. One insider revealed that it once took 2 hours to shoot Meghan pouring tea because the ceramic mug didn't feel elevated enough. Another crew member claimed they were instructed not to speak to Meghan directly unless spoken to, and not to make eye contact with the children during filming. That's right, the very children whose presence would later be used as Meghan's emotional appeal, conveniently photographed on set with perfectly placed camera angles, were allegedly kept at a distance from staff. And still, the footage wasn't working. Multiple scenes had to be scrapped and restructured in post-production. Meghan would fixate on micro details, the angle of a lemon wedge, the texture of a napkin, while refusing to accept feedback on structure, pacing, or narrative. When editors tried to suggest reordering sequences for flow, her team pushed back hard. She's the story, they said. Don't cut around her. But when the audience didn't engage, Meghan didn't go back to the drawing board. She went to Instagram. And that's where the second wave of chaos began. In a move that blindsided Netflix execs, Meghan released a series of personal photos and clips from the set, some including rare glimpses of her children. The public saw them from behind, playing in a kitchen, surrounded by scattered props and faux relatable chaos. The captions were vague, self-congratulatory, and, most importantly, completely unsanctioned by the studio. Netflix was furious. The company had paid millions for exclusive access to the Sussexes, and now Meghan was giving the content away for free. Without warning, without coordination, without a strategy. Internally, this sparked a firestorm. Why were these clips going out on Instagram instead of being packaged into bonus content? Why was Meghan leaking key visual moments while the series was still sinking in the charts? Why did it feel like damage control disguised as motherhood? Because that's exactly what it was. According to insiders, Meghan panicked after seeing the ratings collapse. Her solution? Humanize herself, leverage the kids, flood social media with relatable content that softened her image. Flower arranging, cookie baking, and wide-eyed toddlers who didn't know what mommy does for work. But here's what made it worse. Even those photos felt staged. Everything from the wardrobe to the lighting to the composition was too perfect. The kids' faces were covered with emojis. The backgrounds were spotless. The props were branded. It didn't read as intimacy. It read as strategy, and the public knew it. Online, the reaction was swift. People questioned why Meghan, who once lectured the world about protecting her children's privacy, was now suddenly trotting them out for a failed TV show. Even longtime supporters began asking, was this about the kids, or about salvaging the brand? And in the middle of all this, Harry, or rather, the absence of Harry. Sources say he was barely on set. When he did appear, he was quiet, distracted, sometimes even behind the camera, helping to capture shots. At one point, Meghan allegedly referred to him as her Instagram husband in front of staff, half joking, half serious. The crew laughed. Harry didn't. One staffer recalled how he would disappear for hours at a time, only to return with the kids, and quietly avoid any involvement in Meghan's creative decisions. He looked tired, the insider said, tired of pretending. And that's the heart of it. Everyone on set, from the lighting crew to the executive producers, began to realize the same uncomfortable truth. This wasn't a passion project. It was a salvage mission, a last-ditch attempt to make Meghan Markle work as a solo brand. And when the team around her couldn't deliver the fantasy exactly as she imagined it, she cut them out, replaced them, ghosted them, again and again. Archewell saw multiple staff rotations during the show's development. PR consultants were hired and dropped. Freelancers came and went. Even the stylists and makeup artists reported being iced out for asking too many questions about the creative direction. No one could tell Meghan no, not even Netflix. But now, the tables have turned. After the Instagram stunt, and after the ratings nosedive, Netflix quietly canceled all additional promotional materials for With Love, Meghan. The Christmas special was paused. The social media team was told to monitor, not amplify. Meghan's requests for a second round of press support were met with polite delay tactics. Ted Sarandos stopped replying. And inside Meghan's camp, panic, silence, and more reshuffling. Because she knows what's coming. One more meeting, one final pitch. And if she can't save this with a miracle, Netflix walks. The brand collapses. The myth unravels. And this time, there's no Instagram filter that can fix it. You can always tell when someone's out of real friends. They start baking bread for people they barely know. That's exactly what happened during one of the most bizarre episodes of With Love, Meghan. A tone-deaf, overly rehearsed moment that featured Meghan Markle offering homemade sourdough and smiling like she was auditioning for the Real Housewives of Montecito. The guest? Chrissy Teigen, sort of. Because here's the thing, they're not actually close, not by a long shot. In fact, according to people familiar with the production, Chrissy Teigen had no idea how to respond to Meghan's love bombing. From the over-the-top welcome to the awkward declaration, "I made this for you because I knew you were coming," the moment felt as scripted as a Hallmark Christmas movie, but with worse dialogue. Chrissy played along, but barely. The chemistry was off. The pacing was weird. The warmth, manufactured. No inside jokes. No shared history. Just two women sitting stiffly in a designer kitchen, trying to pretend this was an organic reunion between soul sisters. It wasn't. Behind the scenes, the story was very different. Chrissy had reportedly been approached at the last minute to appear on the show. Her team expressed hesitation, especially after seeing early cuts of the series. And while Meghan hoped Chrissy's presence would legitimize the brand, give it that edgy, modern mom vibe, what happened instead was the exact opposite. Chrissy Teigen, of all people, looked uncomfortable with the performance. And that's saying something. The segment should have been light and fun. Instead, it turned into one of the most parodied moments of the entire show. Viewers mocked Meghan's exaggerated hand gestures, her overly detailed explanation of how she kneaded the bread, and her constant pivots away from Chrissy's responses to talk about, well, Meghan. It wasn't an interview. It was a monologue, delivered with sprinkled dust. At one point, Meghan gushed about her love of elevating everyday experiences. She said it with such intensity, you'd think she'd invented the concept of cinnamon. Meanwhile, Chrissy sat there, nodding politely, sipping from a mug she didn't pick, in a kitchen she wasn't allowed to touch. It was fake, all of it. And viewers saw right through it. Online, social media exploded. "Why does this feel like a hostage brunch?" one user posted. "This isn't vulnerability. This is a PR trap," said another. TikTok was ruthless. Edits showed Chrissy's reactions in slow motion, paired with sound effects that suggested everything from confusion to regret. But the Meghan Teigen segment wasn't just awkward. It was emblematic of a deeper issue. Meghan doesn't seem to have real friends in Hollywood. At least no one is willing to show up on camera. The guest list throughout With Love, Meghan was shockingly thin. No A-listers, no influential producers, no longtime allies or insiders with real stories to tell. Just a handful of agreeable, camera-ready figures, some with Netflix ties, some with Archewell connections, all handpicked to make Meghan look warm, intelligent, and inspiring. But the problem with hiring people to validate you is it never feels real. Even Chrissy, who knows how to fake a friendship on TV better than most, couldn't mask the discomfort. According to a post-production staffer, "We had to cut out at least 4 moments where Chrissy just went silent, not because she was rude, but because she didn't know what to say." And then there was the John Legend no-show. Meghan allegedly floated the idea of John surprising Chrissy with a piano serenade in the final scene, a classic feel-good button to close the segment. John declined. Firmly, politely, completely. His team made it clear he wasn't available, wasn't interested, and wasn't comfortable being used as a prop in Meghan's rebranding effort. The absence was glaring. So was the lack of any chemistry between Meghan and her guest. It wasn't a cooking show. It wasn't a conversation. It was a photo op in motion. And when the cameras cut, Chrissy left quietly. No post-show Instagram posts, no mutual selfies, no behind-the-scenes bonding. Just a generic thank you, followed by nothing. The friendship fizzled before it ever caught fire. But that's the pattern. Meghan has cycled through celebrity friendships like seasonal accessories, Serena Williams, Priyanka Chopra, Ellen, Oprah, even Beyoncé, all name-dropped in interviews, tagged in public thank yous, occasionally paraded for optics, but rarely, if ever, seen with her again. Because in Meghan's world, relationships are strategic. They serve a function, and when they stop serving that function, they vanish. That's why, with Love, Meghan felt hollow. That's why the audience tuned out. Because for all the handcrafted bread and curated candles, there was no heart behind it. Just another set, another script, another photo-ready moment built on borrowed credibility. And the danger now? Hollywood is watching. Executives, publicists, producers, they've all seen the same clips. They've all heard the same whispers. They know when someone's out of real allies and reaching for acquaintances. They know what a friendship for clout looks like. And the Meghan Tigan segment? It confirmed every suspicion. Even worse, it confirmed something Meghan herself can't accept. The brand doesn't work when the relationships aren't real. The sugar-dusted optics might look sweet, but the aftertaste? All bitterness, no substance. And now that Netflix has tasted it, they're starting to spit it out. For months, Netflix executives gritted their teeth. They endured the chaos, the missed deadlines, the one-woman creative dictatorship. They swallowed the weak performance metrics and smiled politely at Meghan's team. But every corporation has its breaking point, and Meghan Markle finally found it. It came to a head in early September, at a meeting scheduled under the guise of a creative review, but known internally as something else entirely. The sit-down, not a brainstorming session, not a check-in, a reckoning. Meghan was invited to present her plan for the future of With Love Meghan. But what she walked into? It was an intervention. The room was small, private, but packed with decision-makers, senior content strategists, international marketing heads, and one very serious executive from the finance department. Ted Sarandos wasn't there, not directly, but his silence spoke volumes, and the message was crystal clear. This isn't working. Fix it, now. The polite small talk ended quickly. Meghan, dressed to impress, opened with a pitch about doubling down on authenticity, citing her upcoming Christmas special as a chance to reclaim the narrative. She mentioned ideas about new guests, themed episodes, even a charity giveaway featuring locally sourced artisanal products. But her voice wavered when she brought up viewership numbers. She skipped over charts. She glossed past the backlash. Netflix didn't. They brought receipts. Detailed performance breakdowns showing rapid viewer drop-off after the first 6 minutes of episode 1. Audience engagement metrics are flatlining. Search trends are falling. Social media response plummeted after the second day. And then came the data Netflix really hated. Internal brand impact scores, a measure of how well Meghan's content reflected positively on the platform. The results? Worse than Harry and Meghan, worse than Archetypes, worse than Heart of Invictus. The damning verdict. With Love, Meghan was actively harming Netflix's image. And the real problem? Meghan didn't see it. Not then. Not even now. When asked what she thought the issues were, Meghan reportedly blamed a cultural disconnect. She claimed critics didn't understand her tone, that the show's softness was deliberately feminine, and that the backlash was proof the world wasn't ready for a new kind of narrative. She said her motherhood was being weaponized against her, that her sincerity was being mocked because she wasn't cynical enough. But Netflix executives weren't interested in metaphors. They wanted results, and they didn't get any. So they laid down the new rules. Rule 1, Harry must be involved, not just as a shadowy off-screen presence. On camera, actively participating, reacting, showing emotion. He was the draw. He was the story. Meghan could not continue to keep him at arm's length. Rule 2, no more giving content away for free on Instagram. No more playlist drops. No more emoji-covered kids in soft focus montages released on her personal timeline while Netflix foots the bill for production. If it's shot on their dime, it stays in their house. Rule 3, a writing team must be hired. No more improvising shallow conversations. No more vague, meandering self-praise disguised as questions. Meghan needed pivot points, jokes, actual dialogue. She wasn't being asked to surrender control. She was being told to grow up. And Rule 4, the hardest pill to swallow. The Meghan Markle brand wasn't working on its own. The audience didn't see her as Oprah 2.0. They didn't see her as Martha Stewart, or Chrissy Teigen, or even Gwyneth Paltrow. She was too controlling to seem warm, too self-obsessed to seem curious, too fragile to be aspirational. And when she wasn't talking about herself, she had nothing to say. That's when the room went quiet, because Meghan didn't respond. Not immediately, just a long pause. Arms crossed, smile twitching. She asked, "So, you want me to change who I am?" The answer? No, we want you to change how you communicate it. Because Netflix didn't invest in Meghan's inner monologue, they invested in access, in the story, in the couple. And right now, the only thing bringing views, the only thing generating buzz, the only card left to play is Harry. The man Meghan sidelined, the man she turned into an extra in her own production, the man she may now be forced to drag back into the frame or risk losing everything, and she knows it. Multiple sources say Meghan left that meeting livid, not crying, not shaken, angry, furious at what she saw as creative interference, furious that Netflix didn't see the bigger picture, furious that Harry's name was once again the thing being leveraged instead of her own. But what choice does she have? The Christmas special is now her last shot. Netflix has made that clear. If it tanks, if Harry's absence continues, if the tone stays shallow and overly manicured, there will be no second season, no expansion, no American Riviera Orchard crossover, no merch, no cookbook, no sprinkle your truth candles. It all vanishes. And Netflix, they walk, quietly, strategically, permanently. So Meghan's now faced with a choice: bend, adapt, and finally act like a collaborator, or double down, play martyr, and risk becoming Hollywood's most expensive cautionary tale. Because while she thought she was the star of this show, Netflix just reminded her who really controls the credits. When everything falls apart, someone has to take the blame. And inside Meghan Markle's orbit, that someone is rarely Meghan. As the Netflix fallout deepens, and with love, Meghan continues its slide into irrelevance. Insiders say the conversations behind closed doors have turned toxic. The PR facade may still be intact on Instagram, all soft florals and bread loaves and vague empowerment slogans, but privately, Meghan is spiraling, not with tears, with fury, with blame, and the target, Prince Harry. To the outside world, Harry has always been her partner, her protector, her reason for walking away from the royal institution. But according to those close to the couple, the dynamic has shifted. The man who once symbolized freedom now represents everything Meghan believes is holding her back. It's a dramatic reversal, and one that's been brewing quietly for years. Let's be honest. From the beginning, Harry was Meghan's golden ticket. The royal title, the global platform, the connection to Princess Diana, all of it gave her the boost her acting career never could. But once she had it, Meghan began rewriting the narrative. She wasn't with Harry because of his royal lineage. She was the victim of it, the rebel bride, the truth teller, the one who escaped the palace with her man and her voice intact. But in the Hollywood world Meghan tried to conquer, the royal story is still the only story anyone cares about. That's the brutal irony. She married into fame, then tried to separate herself from the very thing that gave her access. She tried to turn the prince into a prop, a silent symbol of a life she'd supposedly outgrown. And now that she's standing on her own, trying to lead a brand without him, it's not working. And Meghan knows it. That's why, in private moments, sometimes with staff, sometimes with friends, sometimes in meetings, the blame is starting to shift. She says she gave up everything for him, one insider revealed. Her career, her autonomy, her image. She believes that if she had done this all on her own, without the royal baggage, the world would have accepted her. That's the story Meghan tells herself now that it was Harry's past that poisoned her future. Never mind the global platform it gave her. Never mind the $100 million Netflix deal, the Spotify partnership, the Vanity Fair covers, the Oprah interview, the Vogue photo shoots. In Meghan's eyes, all of that came with a cost she didn't agree to, and she's starting to resent him for it. You can hear it in the subtle jabs, the offhand comments on her show, the way she explains why Harry's not involved. He's with the kids, she says. He's not into cooking. He's camera shy. Always framed as harmless, but repeated enough to sound like justification. Because the truth is, Harry doesn't want to be on camera anymore. Not like this. And Meghan doesn't want to admit that she needs him back in the spotlight to save her own brand. This is where the cracks turn into fault lines. Sources say arguments have intensified. Meghan's team wants him involved. Netflix demands it. But Harry, worn out by years of media scrutiny and internal tension, has become withdrawn, detached. He takes long hikes, plays with the kids, avoids production meetings, leaves the room when Meghan's advisors show up. He's not fighting her, one staffer said. He's retreating. And that's made Meghan angrier, not just because she needs him, but because he refuses to act like a partner in public when she believes she carried him through the darkest years of his life. The book deal, the podcast tour, the Netflix docuseries. She helped engineer all of it. And now, when it's her turn, he's vanishing. But here's the twist. Harry may not be the albatross dragging her down. He may be the only thing still keeping her afloat. Because without him, without his lineage, his trauma, his tragic backstory, Meghan's brand has no central narrative, no emotional core, no tension. She's not Diana 2.0. She's not Martha Stewart. She's not Oprah. She's not even a successful entrepreneur. She's a woman with a curated kitchen and a disappearing audience. Harry was the story, and she tried to write him out of it. And now, he's becoming the scapegoat for a collapse she never thought was possible. Insiders say the tension has reached the point where even Netflix has started rethinking future Sussex projects. If Harry isn't on board for the Christmas special, if he refuses to engage, to co-host, to humanize the experience, the studio will walk. And Meghan's response? According to sources, she's refusing to beg, which leaves both of them stuck in a painful, high-stakes limbo. Harry doesn't want to be on camera. Meghan doesn't want to admit that her brand without him doesn't work. The world is watching. The contracts are drying up, and the marriage? It's quieter than ever. Gone are the choreographed photo ops, the matching outfits, the hand-holding on red carpets, the double interviews. What we see now is separation, not physical, but strategic. Two brands moving apart. And in Meghan's mind, one of them is to blame for the wreckage, the man who gave her a crown, and who now wears it like an anchor. The kitchen's still spotless, the candles still flicker. Meghan still smiles into the camera, framed in soft-focused sincerity. But behind the backdrop of cinnamon sticks and curated playlists, the reality is setting in. The brand is collapsing. And now, everything. Her public image, her career, her marriage, and her multi-million-dollar Netflix deal rests on one final episode, one final chance, one final roll of the dice, the Christmas special. Originally planned as a cozy end-of-year gift to fans, gingerbread houses, children's laughter, maybe even a blurry glimpse of Harry serving cocoa, the special was supposed to wrap up with love, Meghan with warmth and grace. But after the ratings disaster, the internal backlash, and the growing tension between Meghan and Netflix, that special now serves a very different purpose. It's no longer an epilogue. It's a test. Netflix has made it clear, this is Meghan's last shot. If the holiday episode can't salvage viewership, generate buzz, and prove that she can pivot towards something more emotionally grounded, more real, the curtain falls not just on With Love, Meghan, but on the broader Sussex production pipeline. There are no more extensions, no more press tours, no more reframing the narrative, because despite what Meghan may believe, the world isn't waiting to be convinced anymore. The world is watching to see if she can recover, or if she's reached the end of the road. And Netflix, they want Harry back in the picture. They want the couple, the tension, the complexity, the brand that sold the Oprah interview, that drove millions to watch the docuseries, that felt like a story worth telling. What they don't want is another episode of Meghan swirling a spoon in silence, explaining the symbolism of an apricot tart. And that's the impasse. Because as of now, Harry is still out. He's made no firm commitment to appear. Sources say he's resisting pressure from both Meghan and Netflix, unwilling to be pulled back into a performance that feels disingenuous, knowing that if he does show up and the episode succeeds, it proves what Meghan can't bear to admit. He was always the draw. So what happens next? If Harry refuses, and Meghan pushes ahead alone, the special risks become another slow-motion implosion, another showcase of curated loneliness disguised as empowerment. And if it flops, the emails will stop, the meetings will vanish. And American Riviera Orchard, Archewell, With Love, Meghan, all of it, will quietly fade into digital dust. But if Harry agrees to step in, he becomes the savior of a brand that's been blaming him for its collapse. And for Meghan, that might be even harder to swallow. Because this isn't just about ratings anymore. It's about pride, identity, power. It's about a woman who tried to become a mogul, only to discover that she still needed the prince she tried to outshine. It's about a platform, once willing to risk everything for a royal power couple, now calculating whether the story is worth finishing at all. And it's about a Christmas episode that may never even air. Because if Meghan won't bend, if she refuses to let go of the fantasy that she alone is enough to carry the show, then Netflix will walk. And the next time Meghan Markle launches a project, there won't be a platform. There won't be a budget. There won't be a second chance. So, as the lights dim on With Love, Meghan, only one question remains. Will this holiday special bring redemption, or become the final scene in a brand that burned itself out trying to go solo? We're about to find out. But if the past 9 months are any indication, this may not be the comeback Meghan imagined. It may be the curtains.